As the sun dipped below the horizon, it painted the evening sky over Zephira Prime in hues of crimson and gold, casting long shadows over the dense jungles and towering volcanic peaks. A sleek metallic craft descended through the atmosphere, its engines roaring like thunder, shattering the serenity of this alien landscape. The shuttle landed with a thud, crushing the vibrant flora beneath its massive bulk, and began to unload its passengers. Out stepped 2,000 Zarnithian soldiers, their reptilian forms clad in dark, reflective armor that gleamed ominously in the fading light. The Zarnithians, an imposing race known for their military prowess, moved with disciplined precision. Their commander, Zorath, a figure of authority and menace, barked orders that echoed through the clearing. With 4 powerful arms and a gaze that could freeze lava, Zorath led his troops onto the soil of Zephira Prime, ready to claim another victory for their empire. "Spread out and secure the perimeter," Zorath commanded, his voice a low growl that brooked no dissent. "We will establish our base here and prepare for the right of dominion." Well, if you are new here, I invite you to join our community by subscribing to our channel. The planet's inhabitants, humans, were considered primitive by the Galactic Accord. Their technology seemed rudimentary compared to the plasma rifles and energy shields of the Zarnithians. The humans had been dismissed as backward and unworthy of serious consideration, an error that would soon become evident. This oversight was about to plunge the Zarnithians into a nightmare of guerrilla warfare and psychological torment. As night fell, the Zarnithian troops settled into their positions on a small island chain within Zephira Prime's vast archipelago. They believed their technological edge would ensure a swift and decisive victory. Little did they know, the dense foliage and volcanic terrain that surrounded them were not mere obstacles, but the perfect cover for the human resistance. Hidden in the shadows, Captain Ilara observed the invaders with steely determination. She was a leader forged in the crucible of countless battles, her strategies honed to a razor's edge. Alongside her were key operatives, Lieutenant Kellen, a marksman of unparalleled skill, and Sergeant Miko, whose expertise in explosives would soon wreak havoc on the unsuspecting Zarnithians. "We need to strike swiftly and leave no trace," Ilara whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the jungle. "Kellen, take your team and position yourselves on the eastern ridge. Miko, set the charges along their supply route." "Understood, Captain," Kellen replied, his eyes narrowing as he scoped out the distant figures of the Zarnithians. "They won't know what hit them." Miko nodded, a grim smile playing on his lips. "I'll make sure they remember this night." The first attack came without warning. A Zarnithian scout, venturing too close to the tree line, fell silently as a bullet pierced his skull. Panic rippled through the ranks as soldiers scrambled for cover, their advanced sensory gear proving useless against an enemy they could neither see nor understand. Commander Zorath roared in frustration, rallying his troops to form defensive positions. But the damage had been done. The initial assault had sown fear and confusion among the invaders. "Find them!" Zorath bellowed, his voice carrying over the chaos. "Do not let these primitives best us." Throughout the night, the humans continued their relentless assault. Snipers hidden high in the trees picked off Zarnithian officers one by one, each shooting a perfect kill. Explosions rocked the camp as traps set by Sergeant Miko detonated, throwing the reptilian soldiers into further disarray. Every attempt by the Zarnithians to mount a counterattack was met with deadly precision, their plasma blasts lighting up the jungle in futile arcs. By dawn, the once confident invaders were a shattered force. The bodies of the fallen lay strewn across the clearing, their once impenetrable armor pierced by human ingenuity. Commander Zorath, his authority waning, knew they had underestimated the so-called primitives. The jungle was alive with the whispers of resistance, and the Zarnithians, despite their technological superiority, found themselves ensnared in a deadly game they had never anticipated. "Regroup," Zorath shouted, his voice laced with desperation. "We must fortify our position and await reinforcements." The first night on Zephira Prime had proven costly for the Zarnithians. As the sun rose, casting its harsh light on the carnage, Captain Ilara and her team prepared for the next phase of their defense. The battle for Zephira Prime had only just begun, and humanity's defiance would echo across the stars. "Excellent work, everyone," Ilara said, her voice calm but resolute. "This is just the beginning. We will show them the strength of Zephira Prime. The sun climbed higher over Zephyra Prime, its rays piercing through the dense canopy and illuminating the aftermath of the night's battle. The Zarnithians, now wary and cautious, began to regroup and reassess their strategy. Commander Zorath stood in the center of their makeshift camp, his eyes scanning the surrounding jungle with a mixture of anger and frustration. "We cannot allow these humans to continue their attacks unchecked," Zorath growled, his voice filled with barely contained rage. "We need to find their base of operations and eliminate it." Lieutenant Zilara, one of Zorath's most trusted officers, stepped forward. "Commander, our scouts report movement to the north. It could be their main force." Zorath nodded, his jaw set. "Very well. Assemble a team and prepare to advance. We will crush them in one decisive strike." As the Zarnithians mobilized, Captain Ilara and her team watched from their concealed positions. She could see the frustration and desperation etched on the faces of the invaders, and she knew that they were vulnerable. "It looks like they're planning a counterattack," Ilara whispered to Kellen, who was positioned beside her. "We need to draw them further into the jungle. Miko, are the charges ready?" Sergeant Miko nodded, his hands deftly adjusting the last of the explosive devices. "All set, Captain. Once they hit the clearing, it'll be like walking into a minefield." Ilara smiled grimly. "Perfect. Kellen, take your team and set up an ambush along their path. We'll hit them hard and then fade back into the trees." As the Zarnithian force moved out, Zorath took the lead, his senses on high alert. The jungle was silent, too silent for his liking. He signaled for his troops to spread out, hoping to avoid another deadly ambush. The first explosion shattered the uneasy quiet, sending debris and Zarnithian soldiers flying. Panic set in as more charges detonated, creating chaos and confusion. Kellen's team, hidden in the underbrush, opened fire with deadly accuracy, picking off the disoriented invaders one by one. "Fall back!" Zorath bellowed, trying to regain control of his panicked troops. "Regroup and hold your positions." But the humans were relentless. They struck from all sides, their hit-and-run tactics leaving the Zarnithians no chance to mount a coordinated defense. Zorath could feel the battle slipping from his grasp, his anger turning to desperation. Ilara watched the unfolding chaos with satisfaction. "Keep the pressure on them," she ordered, her voice calm amidst the turmoil. "We can't let them regroup." As the battle raged on, Lieutenant Zilara managed to rally a small contingent of troops and make a stand. She directed them to form a defensive perimeter, using their energy shields to fend off the human attacks. "We need to hold this position until reinforcements arrive," Zilara shouted over the din of battle. "Do not let them break through." The Zarnithians fought valiantly, but the humans' knowledge of the terrain and their guerrilla tactics gave them the upper hand. Slowly but surely the invaders were pushed back, their numbers dwindling with each passing moment. Zorath, realizing the futility of their situation, made a desperate decision. "Zilara, we need to retreat. Signal the ships for extraction. We can't win this fight." Zilara hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, Commander, I'll send the signal." The Zarnithians began to fall back, their retreat covered by sporadic bursts of plasma fire. Ilara signaled her team to hold their fire, allowing the invaders to withdraw. "We've won this round," Ilara said, watching as the Zarnithians disappeared into the jungle. "But they'll be back. We need to prepare for their next move." As the sun set on another day of battle, the humans of Zephyra Prime regrouped and reinforced their defenses. They knew the fight was far from over, but their victory had given them hope. The Zarnithians, once confident of an easy conquest, had learned a harsh lesson about the resilience and determination of the human spirit. In the quiet that followed, Ilara gathered her team. "Tonight we rest and tend to our wounded. Tomorrow we prepare for the next phase. We will defend our home no matter the cost." The night air was filled with a sense of grim determination. The humans knew they were fighting for their very survival, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The night was still across Zephyra Prime, but within the human encampment, there was no rest. Captain Ilara stood at the edge of their hidden base, her eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. Around her, the human fighters were tending to their wounds, reloading their weapons, and reinforcing their defenses. The day's victory had been hard won, but Ilara knew the Zarnithians would not retreat easily. "Captain," Lieutenant Kellen approached, his face smeared with dirt and sweat. "The men are ready. We're fortifying the southern perimeter and setting up additional traps. Ilara nodded. Good. We can't afford to let our guard down. They'll come back, and we need to be prepared. Nearby, Sergeant Miko was busy instructing a group of soldiers on the placement of explosive devices. Remember, these need to be hidden well. We want them to walk right into our traps. The soldiers nodded, their expressions grim but determined. Each of them understood the stakes of the battle. The survival of Zephyra Prime rested on their shoulders, and they would not let their home fall without a fight. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, a low hum echoed through the jungle. The Zarnithians were on the move again. This time their approach was more cautious, and their formation was tighter. Commander Zorath, his pride wounded but his resolve unbroken, led the charge. "We won't be caught off guard again," Zorath hissed to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Zilara. "Double the scouts and keep the units close. They won't surprise us this time." The Zarnithians advanced slowly, their eyes scanning the dense foliage for any sign of human resistance. They moved with deliberate precision, determined to avoid the pitfalls that had claimed so many of their comrades the day before. Hidden within the thick underbrush, Captain Ilara watched the advancing troops. She could see their hesitation and their wariness. The element of surprise was gone, but the humans still had the advantage of terrain and tactics. "Wait for my signal," Ilara whispered into her comm device. "Let them come closer." The Zarnithians continued their advance, unaware of the silent figures watching their every move. Just as they reached the edge of a small clearing, Ilara gave the order. "Now!" A series of explosions ripped through the jungle, sending Zarnithian soldiers flying. The humans opened fire from their concealed positions, their bullets finding their marks with deadly accuracy. The Zarnithians tried to regroup, but the chaos and confusion were overwhelming. "Hold the line!" Zorath roared, trying to rally his troops. "Do not fall back!" But the humans were relentless. Sergeant Miko's traps detonated one after another, cutting through the Zarnithian ranks and sowing panic. Lieutenant Kellen and his sharpshooters picked off the officers, leaving the invaders leaderless and disoriented. Despite their advanced weaponry, the Zarnithians found themselves at a severe disadvantage. The jungle, with its thick canopy and uneven terrain, was the perfect battlefield for the human guerrilla fighters. The invaders' energy shields and plasma rifles were powerful, but they were no match for the humans' hit-and-run tactics and intimate knowledge of the land. As the battle raged on, Ilara saw an opportunity. She signaled for a small team to flank the Zarnithian position and cut off their retreat. Among the team was Corporal Rin, a young soldier with fierce determination. "Rin, take your squad and circle around to the east," Ilara ordered. "Cut off their escape and drive them towards our main force." "Understood, Captain," Rin replied, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. The flanking maneuver was swift and precise. Rin and his squad moved through the jungle with practiced ease, emerging behind the Zarnithian lines and catching them off guard. Trapped between the two human forces, the Zarnithians had no choice but to fight desperately for their lives. In the center of the fray, Commander Zorath fought with a ferocity born of desperation. He knew their situation was dire, but he refused to concede defeat. Swinging his plasma sword, he cut through the human ranks, his eyes blazing with fury. Captain Ilara spotted Zorath and knew that taking him down would be crucial to breaking the Zarnithian morale. She signaled to Kellen, who nodded and took aim. "Take out their leader," Ilara commanded, her voice cold and resolute. With a single well-placed shot, Kellen struck Zorath. The commander staggered, his sword dropping from his grasp as he fell to his knees. Seeing their leader fall, the remaining Zarnithians broke ranks and fled into the jungle, their resolve shattered. As the last of the invaders disappeared into the dense foliage, Ilara allowed herself a moment of relief. The battle had been brutal, but they had held their ground. Zephyra Prime remained in human hands, at least for now. Gathering her team, Ilara surveyed the battlefield. "We've won this fight, but the war is far from over. We need to stay vigilant, prepare for the next wave. They'll be back and we need to be ready." With a sense of grim determination, the humans of Zephyra Prime began to fortify their defenses once more. They knew that the Zarnithians would return, but they were prepared to defend their home with every ounce of strength they possessed. The brief moment of respite was shattered as the hum of Zarnithian aircraft echoed through the treetops. Captain Ilara's sharp gaze turned skyward, her heart pounding with renewed urgency. The Zarnithians had regrouped faster than anticipated, and now they were launching a full-scale assault. "Incoming, everyone to your positions!" Ilara's voice rang out, carrying over the sounds of the jungle. The humans scrambled to their posts, gripping their weapons with steely determination. Commander Zorath, having recovered from his earlier injury, now leads the charge from the sky. His face was a mask of anger and determination. He would not be humiliated again. As the Zarnithian dropships descended, they unleashed a barrage of plasma fire, scorching the earth and sending trees crashing down in flames. "Captain, we need to take out those ships," Sergeant Miko called out, his eyes scanning for a way to neutralize the aerial threat. "If they establish a foothold, we're done for." Ilara nodded, her mind racing. "Kellen, I need you to lead a team and take out their anti-gravity engines. Miko, get your explosives ready. We'll hit them from the ground." Kellen assembled his best sharpshooters and moved swiftly through the underbrush, their movements silent and precise. The Zarnithian dropships hovered ominously above, their guns blazing. Kellen's team took up positions on a ridge overlooking the clearing, their rifles trained on the vulnerable underbelly of the ships. "On my mark," Kellen whispered, his fingers steady on the trigger. 3, 2, 1, fire! A volley of high-caliber rounds streaked through the air, striking the ship's engines with pinpoint accuracy. Sparks flew, and the dropships began to wobble and descend uncontrollably. Below, Miko's team rushed forward, planting charges at strategic points. The explosions that followed sent shockwaves through the jungle, toppling the damaged ships and scattering Zarnithian soldiers. Meanwhile, Commander Zorath, furious at the sight of his crippled fleet, barked orders through his comm. "All ground units converge on human positions. Do not let them gain any ground." The Zarnithian ground forces surged forward, their plasma rifles firing in unison. The humans, entrenched in their fortified positions, returned fire with grim determination. Bullets and plasma bolts crisscrossed the battlefield, turning the once tranquil jungle into a war zone. Amidst the chaos, Corporal Rin led a flanking maneuver, his squad moving swiftly through the dense foliage. They emerged behind the Zarnithian lines, their sudden appearance throwing the invaders into disarray. "Rin, take out their heavy artillery!" Ilara's voice crackled over the comm. "We can't hold them off if they bring those cannons into play." Rin nodded, his eyes narrowing as he spotted the Zarnithian artillery units. With swift precision, his squad engaged the enemy, their rifles blazing. Explosions rocked the clearing as the artillery pieces were destroyed, their remains scattered across the battlefield. Despite their losses, the Zarnithians continued to press forward. Commander Zorath, driven by a mix of rage and desperation, led a direct assault on the human positions. His troops followed, their war cries echoing through the jungle. Ilara knew that this was the decisive moment. She rallied her fighters, and her voice was a beacon of hope amidst the turmoil. "Hold the line for Zifira Prime!" The human defenders fought with everything they had, their determination unyielding. They knew that if they faltered, their home would be lost. As the battle reached its peak, Ilara and Zorath found themselves face to face, the chaos of the battlefield swirling around them. "Your resistance is futile, human," Zorath snarled, his plasma sword crackling with energy. "We will crush you!" Ilara's eyes blazed with defiance. "This is our home, Zorath. We will never surrender." With a fierce cry, Zorath lunged forward, his sword slicing through the air. Ilara dodged, her movements swift and precise. She countered with a series of rapid strikes, her blade clashing against Zorath's with a shower of sparks. Around them, the battle raged on. Human and Zarnithian soldiers clashed in brutal hand-to-hand combat, their cries of pain and fury filling the air. The ground was littered with fallen trees, but neither side showed any sign of giving up. Ilara and Zorath's duel continued, each move a test of strength and skill. They were evenly matched, neither able to gain the upper hand. But Ilara fought with the knowledge that she was defending her home and her people, and that gave her an edge. With a final desperate surge of energy, Ilara knocked Zorath's sword from his grasp and delivered a powerful blow that sent him sprawling to the ground. She stood over him, her weapon poised for the final strike. "It's over, Zorath," she said, her voice steady. "Leave now and tell your superiors that Zifira Prime will never fall." Defeated and humiliated, Zorath nodded, his eyes filled with grudging respect. "You have won this day, human, but we will return." As the Zarnithian forces began to retreat, the humans let out a collective cheer. They had held their ground, but they knew this was just one battle in a larger war. They would need to stay vigilant. for the Zarnithians would undoubtedly return with greater force. Ilara watched the invaders disappear into the jungle, her resolve hardening. "We fought well today," she said to her team, "but this is far from over. We need to regroup, reinforce, and prepare for the next assault. Zifira Prime will remain free no matter the cost." With renewed determination, the humans set to work, knowing that their fight for survival had only just begun. As dawn broke once more over Zifira Prime, a tense calm settled across the war-torn landscape. The humans, having pushed back the latest Zarnithian assault, now turned their focus to fortifying their defenses. Captain Ilara stood atop a ridge overlooking their hidden base, her mind racing with plans and contingencies. "We need to stay one step ahead of them," Ilara said, addressing her gathered officers. "Our best chance is to strike at their supply lines and keep them off balance. Miko, any luck with the recon drones?" Sergeant Miko nodded, tapping a small device strapped to his wrist. "We've identified several key supply depots and staging areas. If we hit them hard, we can disrupt their operations." Ilara's eyes narrowed as she studied the holographic map. "Good. We'll split into 3 teams. Kellen, you'll lead the first team and take out their northern supply depot. Miko, your team will handle the southern staging area. I'll take the 3rd team and hit their central command post." The officers nodded in agreement, their resolve unshaken despite the grueling battles they had faced. Each of them understood the importance of this mission. Striking at the heart of the Zarnithian logistics would cripple their ability to sustain the invasion. As the teams prepared to move out, Corporal Rin approached Ilara, his expression serious. "Captain, I'd like to volunteer for the Central Command strike. I know the terrain well and I can help guide the team." Ilara studied Rin for a moment before nodding. "All right, Rin, you're with me. Let's move out." The 3 teams set off, moving swiftly and silently through the dense jungle. The canopy above provided cover from any aerial surveillance, and their knowledge of the terrain gave them a significant advantage. Kellen's team reached the northern supply depot first. From their vantage point, they could see the Zarnithian guards patrolling the perimeter. Kellen signaled his sharpshooters to take position, each one selecting a target with precision. "On my mark," Kellen whispered, his voice barely audible. 3, 2, 1, now." The air filled with the crack of gunfire as the sharpshooters eliminated the guards in a matter of seconds. The rest of the team moved in, planting charges on the storage tanks and ammunition crates. Moments later, a series of explosions rocked the depot, sending plumes of smoke and debris into the sky. Meanwhile, Miko's team approached the southern staging area. Using the cover of the thick underbrush, they navigated their way to the edge of the clearing. Miko pointed out the targets: fuel reserves, communication arrays, and ammunition stockpiles. "Set the charges and be ready to fall back," Miko instructed. "We need to be quick and efficient." The team moved like shadows, placing the explosives with practiced ease. As they retreated to a safe distance, Miko triggered the detonator. The ensuing blasts tore through the staging area, engulfing it in flames and rendering it useless to the Zarnithians. Ilara's team, with Rin guiding them, navigated the treacherous terrain towards the central command post. The facility was heavily guarded, with sentries posted at every entrance. Ilara knew that a direct assault would be too risky. "Rin, any ideas on how to get past those guards?" Ilara asked, her eyes scanning the area for weaknesses. With practiced precision, the teams moved into action. Kellen's sharpshooters took aim at the watchtowers, picking off the sentries before they could sound the alarm. Simultaneously, Miko's team advanced from the east, setting charges on the Zarnithian artillery. The initial phase of the assault went smoothly, but as the explosions began to rock the enemy camp, the Zarnithians rallied quickly. Plasma fire lit up the night, and the jungle echoed with the sounds of battle. Ilara, positioned at the center, coordinated the assault with calm efficiency. "Kellen, focus on disabling their heavy weapons. Miko, keep the pressure on their eastern flank. We need to split their forces." Kellen's team advanced through the chaos, their movements swift and decisive. They engaged the Zarnithians in close-quarters combat, using the dense underbrush to their advantage. Despite the enemy's technological superiority, the humans' guerrilla tactics proved effective. In the midst of the fray, Corporal Rin found himself face-to-face with a towering Zarnithian warrior. The alien lunged at him, its plasma sword crackling with energy. Rin dodged to the side, his reflexes honed by countless battles and countered with a precise strike from his blade. The Zarnithian staggered back, and Rin seized the moment to deliver a final blow, his weapon piercing the alien's armor. Breathing heavily, Rin looked around to see his comrades pushing forward, their resolve unwavering. Miko's team, meanwhile, had successfully disabled the enemy artillery, but they were met with fierce resistance as the Zarnithians regrouped. The humans fought with everything they had, their determination fueled by the knowledge that the fate of their world depended on their success. As the battle raged on, Ilara saw an opportunity to break the enemy's lines. Kellen and Miko converge on their command center. If we take it out, the rest will fall. With a coordinated effort, the two teams pushed through the Zarnithian defenses, their combined strength overwhelming the enemy. Ilara joined the front lines, her presence inspiring her troops as they fought with renewed vigor. The final push was intense. The air was filled with the sounds of conflict and the acrid smell of burning foliage. But the humans' relentless assault proved too much for the Zarnithians. One by one, their defenses crumbled. With a final charge, Ilara and her team breached the command center, taking out the remaining Zarnithian officers. The enemy forces, now leaderless and demoralized, began to retreat, their will to fight shattered. As dawn broke over the highlands, the humans stood victorious. The battle had been hard fought, but they had secured the high ground. Ilara looked over her exhausted but triumphant troops, pride swelling in her chest. "We did it," she said, her voice carrying over the battlefield. "But this is just the beginning. We need to fortify our position and prepare for their next move. Zephyra Prime will stand strong." With the high ground secured, the humans of Zephyra Prime knew they had taken a crucial step towards defending their world. But they also knew that the Zarnithians would not give up easily. The battle for their home was far from over, and they were ready to face whatever came next. The highlands of Zephyra Prime, now under human control, became a stronghold. The view from the summit offered a strategic advantage, but Captain Ilara knew that this victory was just a temporary reprieve. The Zarnithians would regroup and return with greater force. The final confrontation was inevitable. Ilara convened with her officers once more in their makeshift command center. The mood was tense but resolute. The recent victories had bolstered their spirits, but the looming threat of a larger Zarnithian force weighed heavily on them. "We've secured the high ground," Ilara began, her voice steady. "But we must prepare for their counterattack. Our scouts report that the Zarnithians are amassing their forces to the north. This will be their final push to take Zephyra Prime." Lieutenant Kellen, ever the pragmatist, nodded. "We need to reinforce our defenses and set traps along the likely routes of their advance. They'll throw everything they have at us." Sergeant Miko, his face a mask of determination, added, "We should set up a fallback line. If they breach our front, we can retreat in an orderly fashion and continue the fight from a secondary position." Ilara looked around the table, seeing the determination in her officer's eyes. "Agreed. We'll fight them with everything we have. Every inch of this ground will cost them dearly." The preparations began in earnest. Trenches were dug, barricades erected, and sniper nests established. Miko's team set up a network of explosive traps and fallback positions. The human fighters, though weary from the constant battle, worked with a singular purpose: to defend their home. As night fell, a tense silence descended over the highlands. The humans knew that this calm was the prelude to the storm. Ilara stood on the ridge, looking out into the darkness, her mind racing with thoughts of the impending battle. "Captain!" a voice called from behind her. It was Corporal Rin, his face illuminated by the flickering torchlight. "Everything's in place. We're ready." Ilara nodded, her resolve hardening. "Good. Get some rest, Rin. We'll need every bit of strength for what's coming." The hours passed slowly, and the anticipation was palpable. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the sound of marching feet and the low hum of Zarnithian machinery echoed through the valley. The enemy was coming. Ilara took her position at the front lines, her eyes scanning the approaching forces. The Zarnithians moved in a tight formation, their ranks bristling with advanced weaponry. Commander Zorath was at the forefront, his face a mask of grim determination. "Hold your fire until they're within range," Ilara commanded, her voice calm but firm. "We need to make every shot count." The Zarnithians advanced steadily, their confidence bolstered by their superior numbers and technology. As they crossed the threshold into range, Ilara gave the order. Now! A hail of bullets and energy bolts erupted from the human positions, striking the Zarnithian front lines with devastating effect. The invaders faltered but quickly regrouped, returning fire with their plasma rifles. The air was filled with the sounds of battle, the acrid smell of gunpowder and burning foliage. Miko's traps detonated one by one, sending plumes of earth and debris skyward and causing chaos in the Zarnithian ranks. Despite the destruction, the enemy pressed on, their sheer numbers pushing them forward. "Fall back to the secondary positions," Ilara ordered, as the Zarnithians breached the first line of defense. The humans retreated in an orderly fashion, regrouping at the fallback line. The battle raged on, the highlands echoing with the sounds of conflict. The human fighters, though outnumbered, fought with a tenacity and bravery that inspired those around them. Each inch of ground was contested fiercely, with the Zarnithians paying dearly for every step they advanced. As the day wore on, it became clear that this was the turning point. The Zarnithians, despite their numbers and advanced weaponry, could not break the human spirit. Commander Zorath, seeing his forces falter, knew that their only chance was a decisive strike. "All units focus on the command center," Zorath roared, directing his remaining forces towards Ilara's position. The Zarnithians converged on the central stronghold. Their assault was relentless. Ilara, realizing the gravity of the situation, rallied her troops for one final stand. "This is it. We hold this ground or we fall, for Zephyra Prime." The humans fought with a ferocity born of desperation and hope. Ilara, at the forefront, engaged in brutal hand-to-hand combat with Zorath. The clash of blades and the crackle of plasma filled the air as the two leaders battled fiercely. Zorath swung his plasma sword with deadly precision, but Ilara's agility and skill kept her one step ahead. She parried his strikes and countered with swift blows, each one aimed to weaken and disarm. The battle around them raged on, with the human defenders pushing back the Zarnithian assault with sheer willpower. Slowly but surely the tide began to turn. The Zarnithians, exhausted and demoralized, started to falter. With a final, decisive strike, Ilara disarmed Zorath and brought him to his knees. "It's over, Zorath," she said, her voice steady and unyielding. "Your forces are defeated. Leave now and never return." Zorath, his pride shattered, nodded reluctantly. "You have won this day, human, but the galaxy will hear of this." As the Zarnithians retreated, a cheer erupted from the human defenders. They had done the impossible. They had defended Zephyra Prime against overwhelming odds. Ilara looked around at her exhausted but victorious troops, pride swelling in her heart. "We did it," she said, her voice carrying over the battlefield. "Zephyra Prime is safe thanks to all of you, but our fight is not over. We must rebuild, we must remain vigilant, and we must be ready for whatever comes next." The humans began the arduous task of tending to their wounded and fortifying their defenses. They knew that the victory today was a testament to their resilience and determination. They had proven that no matter the odds, they would fight for their home with everything they had. As the sun set over the highlands, casting a warm glow over the victorious defenders, Ilara stood with her officers, looking towards the horizon. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. The battle for Zephyra Prime had been won, but the war for their future was just beginning.